and welcome to the Fairy Elephant Effect podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Walter. I am a EFT tapping specialist, a life coach, and a happy habits activator. We might need to stop. Hello, I am Elizabeth Walter and this is the Fairy Elephant Effect podcast. I'm a life coach, an EFT tapping specialist and a happy habits activator. And I have a book called the Fairy Elephant Effect, and this is really starting to get to me. Hello, I don't know what I'm... Hello and welcome to the Fairy Elephant Effect podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Walter. I'm a life coach, a happy habits activator, and I am the author of the Fairy Elephant Effect book. Hello, I'm Elizabeth Walter, and I'm your host for the Fairy Elephant Effect podcast. I'm a life coach, an EFT tapping specialist, and a happy habits activator, and the author of the Fairy Elephant Effect book. I created this space because I know that what it's like to carry emotional stories that keep you stuck, because I had some that kept me stuck. And those stories keep us in pain, in patterns, and in silence. But I also know this. You matter because everything starts and ends with you. Each week, I walk beside you through honest conversations, practical tools and powerful insights that help you move from trauma to trust, from fear to freedom, and from surviving to thriving. This is where we become better at being ourselves, whole, courageous and heart-led. So take a breath, settle in. This is your time, and let's begin. Hello, and welcome, Candice, joining us on the Fairy Elephant Effect podcast today. I'm super excited about this, and thank you for coming along and being willing to answer my questions.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm excited about this.
Cool. So, I've sent you some stuff about the Fairy Elephant Effect, and you get that, so which is great. So let's begin with your personal experience. What does the Fairy Elephant Effect mean to you if you were going to put it into your life?
So, I realized in reading that, I've had a lot of fairy elephant effects. And I actually wrote it down, and what I think it is things you were told by others that shaped a belief you have about yourself that is not true.
Yeah.
And that definitely has happened throughout my life. We'll probably get into that a little bit more, but that's what I believe that the fairy elephant effect is.
Yeah, it is, and it leaves a residue in our life that could send us on a course that was never meant for us, and has caused us emotional or physical pain, and some limiting beliefs. So if you were to name a fairy elephant effect and an event or an experience that had an impact on you, what would that be? Could you have one that you can relate to like that?
Yeah, I actually have several. So, but one that stood out the most, and it definitely has a lot to do with relationships. And, how I feel about myself. Things is totally different now that I'm older, but how I felt about myself then when I was younger. And I had a incident where it was this guy that I liked. Funny we're talking about this because I actually brought this up to my mom like a couple of days ago. and I was in junior high and everything, and this guy that I really liked, and he was funny and everything, and well, he found out that I liked him, and he literally came up in my face and said, "Why do you like me? I don't like you. You're fat and you're ugly." Yes.
Wow, that is super negative, powerful. And how did you feel? I mean, that would have been a really attack.
It was an attack. I went home and cried. I definitely did. I think I probably
Yeah.
cried a couple of days behind that. Yeah.
And so, how did that affect you going forward when it came to liking somebody else? Were you like, I'm not going to tell anybody, I'm going to pretend I don't like him? How did that affect you going forward?
You know what, Elizabeth? It actually still kind of affects me. Like, I don't, I don't express or tell someone how I feel anymore. Um,
Yeah.
Especially for someone that I do like, for that simple fact. And I like to keep it that way because I kind of feel like I'm kind of like guarding myself, which I know I need to get out of. I really do. But I feel like I'm protecting myself, you know? If someone shows interest in me and they're like like forward about it, like, I'm into you and everything, then maybe I'll go with it and I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. They stated that they were into me, so, let's see where this goes. Um, but other than that, I don't state that I'm into someone. I don't do it, and I still to this day don't do it. And I believe it probably have a lot of negative effect on me as far as like being in relationships because I don't. Sorry, my phone is ringing. Sorry about that. Um,
It's okay.
I don't. I'm not in a lot of relationships.
Well, that's interesting, even though it's not on our little questions here, but that's a perfect example of why, or perhaps you would come and spend an hour doing some EFT tapping. Because when we have a story, a belief, and a hurt, an emotion, it sits in our emotional body and it just stays with us. And because of that, it is quite right, it's protection, it's a barrier to having that pain come in again. And when we do EFT tapping, we can release that pain and that story, and you can come from a new place from within you to go, I'm safe, and it's okay for me to be me. And the fairy elephant effect, that is a very good example. And for our listeners, you may have a fairy elephant effect too, and sharing it, just talking about it, also helps to break the attachment, the string, the hook that it has that's pulling you back into your past. Mm. You, Candice, some really good story, and I'd love to work with you to remove that, the whole impact of that, so it changes how you are moving forward. So, so when did you realise the story you were living wasn't yours? So you've obviously had some conversation and know that that actually isn't you now. Do you think that isn't you now, but you can't get past it?
It's definitely not me now. I've gotten past it. It seemed like it's just recently. It kind of like you know how when you live in your life and like you have put things like behind your head, but something will happen to where as though it comes back up and it resurfaces. Like I blocked that out for years. Like I was okay, you know. I love looking at myself now in the mirror and just saying, "Oh, you looking cute today, Candace." Kind of like give myself those little, those little affirmations and everything. But it's always it it always something that you could be totally fine, and then all of a sudden something happened where that like start to resurface back up, and you're like, "Oh my goodness, why is this coming back?" You know, I thought it was dead and
Yeah.
buried. you know,
Yeah. But the
um,
thing is, it sits in there.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. It definitely does. And how I get over those type of things too has a lot to do with my faith and reading the Bible and just trusting and believing in the Lord. Because you know everything that He does and everything that He creates is perfect. So if I'm creating His image, then I'm perfect and within Him. So I try to remind myself that, but it's funny, and I'm pretty sure we'll probably talk about this later. It's funny how words have so much power, and when you say those words to certain people and their emotion and they absorb it, it really does take a negative effect. It does.
Yeah, and those stories, those undercurrents that are still sitting in our life, but we've,
Right.
put them away. Um, when a situation come up, it's like a wave.
Mm-hmm.
That incident comes, then the next wave, and the wave, and the wave, and then suddenly it's like a big wave, and it can overwhelm us.
Yeah.
And yes, we are perfect, but the stories that we have held in our bodies say, well, maybe a little bit less than, and it wants to challenge us and to keep us feeling less than who we are. So you obviously, you're giving yourself good information. You're connecting with who you really are, but this old story, has comes up and goes, oh yeah, well, we don't know if you really believe that. We're going to challenge you, um, and that's why I think EFT is fantastic, because that story's gone. It no longer has an emotional response. Now, I've come from abuse, and when I first did counselling, they wanted to talk about stuff, and I never wanted to talk about the things that happened to me, and because it would leave a huge emotional, I was drowning. It just was overwhelming. So when I learned EFT and I went with a psychotherapist and we learned advanced EFT, we did it all together. I suddenly the event happened, but there's no emotional attachment, and so if I have to, the event comes up in my mind, it's like, oh yeah, that happened. That was that, Elizabeth. There's no emotion. And for you, that event still has some emotional residue. And so it comes up and it interrupts. So for me, when those things come up, which they don't come up very often, there's
Mm-hmm.
no emotional attachment. So there's nothing for it to land on. And I don't feel anyone triggered or upset. It's like, well, that happened. That was an experience, but that's not who I am. And
Right.
I just find that really cool. Mm.
Yeah. 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 I totally understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just can't. That's just such a good story to help people understand what the fairy elephant effect is. That is such a great story. I'm just so thrilled that you have shared it with us, Candice.
Thank you. Oh, Elizabeth, can
Oh,
we pause
yeah.
recording for one moment? Because I think my Terminex guy is out.
Well, Candice, that's life, isn't it? You had to rush off and go and do something. But that doesn't mean that you still can't be doing you as well.
Right.
You're getting stuff. So I'm pleased you came back. Some other people go, oh, I have to go now, and that's it. But you didn't. So you're obviously committed to you and moving forward in your life. So I have another question here that we've kind of covered a little bit, but what would you say to your younger self still carrying the emotional weight of stories that have been in your life? Because there must be more than one story. So
Yes.
what would you say to your younger self about people saying things or doing things?
I will say, Candace, don't listen to them because who you getting ready to become is greater than anything else, and just keep moving forward. Don't listen to people, and
Yeah.
show them. Okay, so like you show them,
Oh, yeah. So that that indicates a little bit that people have said, oh, you're not allowed to be that person, or you'll never be that person. So you've had perhaps a lot of judgment, because people do love to judge others. Um, and that judgment can feel very heavy, can feel like a burden for us. And when we can say, well, that's your opinion, and what you think is your business, not mine, that's quite freeing, but it's also quite hard to do. But you've obviously been able to do that in some parts of your life.
yeah, definitely. And and it always come from guys. I don't know what this is, but
Yeah, well, it might be connected to the first one, but yeah.
but I had this one guy I was working with, and he got upset with me because I wouldn't have him go on my computer or something like that. And he said something to me that really bothered me. And he said, he was like, ah, that's why you're never going to go anywhere with that ghetto attitude of yours. I'm
Oh,
like,
that's very judging.
yeah. I was like, I don't think it, and then he called me a bad word as he walked away. Um, but it wasn't the part that said I had a ghetto attitude. It was the part that he said I'm never going to go anywhere. Now, I saw him, and as time passed, and he saw me, and he literally made it a point to say I'm sorry for what I said. And I
Oh,
was like,
that's good.
yeah, yeah. He said, I just want to apologize and I'm sorry for what I said. And I'm like, oh no. I was like, oh, it's okay. I'm not tripping off of it. But then I was like, oh my goodness, because that kind of like actually broke something. Because I knew it
Oh,
wasn't true, but it really affirmed that what he's saying said is totally not true. But it really healed me in that moment because it made me say, Candice, stop listening to what people say because, you know, you're more than the words that they say that you are.
yeah, I do. And that's a very beautiful story that you were able to have that full circle of that story, which many people don't get. They don't get the other side of it. But, we've been brought up that other people's opinions quite often matter than our own. And if they say something to us, they must have an impression of us or see something in us that we don't see. And and so we might take them on, and we might not believe them fully, but we might say, oh, maybe there's something in there I need to look at. We start to question ourselves, when at the end of the day, the only person that really matters is how you feel about you, and
Right.
are you putting your best foot forward? Are you being the best version of you? Are you doing that? But that's a hard thing to do. But the fact that you had the full story and that guy came back in and said, look, I was wrong, I apologise, is really big. And I often wonder, and there is a little bit of evidence, when people say these things to us, they're really saying them to themselves.
Yeah.
They're saying that same story to themselves first, because the first person that hears anything is ourselves. And so he was just pushing that onto you. And whether it was a belief in him and he's grown a bit and can come back and go, oh, that was unacceptable to say that to you, Candice. But yeah, I love the healing in that story. And the fact that you are able to keep moving forward despite somebody's view of you or opinion of you and trying to make that a truth for you.
Yeah, and
Mm.
I think about a lot of other people. There are people who can move forward, and there's people who don't, who stay stuck. I told my mom, her and I had this conversation. We always have conversations, and her and I had this conversation, and I said, there's two type of people. There's the person that let what people say and did to them fuel them to become better. And then there's the person that let people say and do hurt them and basically write their future for them. And so they start to
Yes.
become what people say and do to them. And then I said there's two type of people. Not everybody is strong enough to move forward, but because of who I am and what idea I have about myself and what I want to become in life, it fueled me to say, oh, well, I'm going to show them, type of,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
yes,
love that. But those other people that aren't able to get up and away,
right,
they haven't perhaps had people around them, because your mum sounds like your supporter
yeah,
that believes in you and loves you unconditionally. So you've had somebody in your life that says it's okay for you to be you. And those people, I have a lot of people come that are stuck because other people's opinions have become the only thing that matters because of the emotional drought that they have. If Billy Bob says you're useless, then they have believed they're useless. And then, of course, when we believe something, we have to have evidence of it.
right,
And I've had people here, on my couch, not really lying down, but just people coming to one-to-ones, and we've changed some of those stories, and then suddenly
they're able to move forward and go, oh, actually, I can do this and I can do that. And their whole story and the whole, their people in their orbit, everything starts to change. And for you, you had somebody in there, and there's this thing, many people have disadvantaged lives, but if they have one close person in their life, and they're growing up, one person that believes in them, then they can get out and get away from it. Just one person
That's
needs to
true.
believe in ourselves, and it can change everything. Um, and when you look at some really unfortunate events that people have, and then you wonder how you got to the other side, and then you go, who believed in you? Oh, Auntie May believed in me. And I might have only seen her every 3 months or 6 months, but I know she believed in me, and that was just that little bit of spark so I could believe in me. But yeah, so anyway, back to our questions. Um, so we did that one. And so we're going to get to this. First of all, we're going to ask, why do you think so many of us silently carry inherited or imposed stories? Like there's a story about the oven. I'll tell you the story about the oven. So in the olden days, they used to have on a Sunday with a big roast. They have a special knife and they'd oil the roast. It was a big deal putting it in, and that knife is passed down and it's a tradition. And we're sort of getting close to nowadays, and there's these two young girls, and one was saying to her, she's probably in 25 or something, oh, I get to have the knife, that we're having a big occasion, and I'm getting the knife passed to me from my grandmother. My mum's going to be there. It's going to be fantastic, special occasion, this wonderful tradition. And the other girl goes, oh, we don't do that anymore. And she goes, oh, you're missing out. She said, no, not really, because my grandmother's mother said, thank God we've got ovens that you can fit, because the knife was to cut the joint off because the roast wouldn't fit in the oven.
Uh,
And so this whole ceremony was all about cutting the joint off so you could fit your roast in the oven. And this other girl said, well, thank goodness. My, grandmother said, we can fit the whole thing in now. We don't have to spend half an hour chopping the side off. We can just put the ovens are big enough.
yeah.
And it just shows you how we can have these stories come down. It's very simplified, but we think it's a tradition. We think we have to do it. But it was because they only did it then because they had ovens were too small, and they didn't want to do it then. But it's become this big, added a story to it. And there's
Yeah.
things, emotional stories. There's beliefs in families. It's like we have to live like that. But if you go, well, why did they start living like that? Something must have happened to them. Something, there was some reason. So the girl on this side said, oh, no, the oven's big enough. People still come over. We have a great time in family. But we don't have to chop the joint off. We don't have to, wait, do all this special thing. We just get together and enjoy each other. And so, you may have a story in your family. I know there were some stories in my family that were passed on for the wrong reasons. And people think,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's tradition. That's how, but it's not. It's just something that served then and doesn't serve now. Does
Yeah.
anything come up for you? Well, I mean, it's a great story. I just love it. It just shows you a truth about many things.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard. It's really hard to say with my family because we really didn't have any stories, but we did have. There was a tradition. So every year, um, my mom would tell me, I was wondering why during Easter time, the Ten Commandments. I don't know, you know the Ten Commandments. Like it's a old school 4 hours, right? Oh, so we will watch the Ten Commandments every year, and then it kind of like fell off watching it because they've changed it so many times, and we don't know when it's gonna play and this and that and the other. But my mom said that every year they had to sit and watch the Ten Commandments every year, Easter time, the whole 4 hours, everything. So we started doing it, and she was like, yeah, it was kind of like a part of. the whole Easter tradition, Easter celebration. And of course, you have to have the pork, like you have to have the pig, the ham for Easter. But I was like, it dawned on me like this Easter, and I said the Passover was, was very significant, yes, but I said these are two different stories we're talking about. We're talking about Christ's resurrection, and we're talking about the Passover that happened in the Old Testament. I was like, I started wondering, and I'm like, I'm not exactly sure which the two is like actually coming together. And then I realized, yeah, it's for the Jewish holiday and tradition during the Passover time. But we celebrate, Jesus' crucifixion, and I'm like, well, where is the movie about that? Where's the story about that on TV that we can then turn into a new tradition as to the reason why we're celebrating Easter? Type of thing. Because I just realized this year, I was like, wait a minute, the two isn't that it doesn't. It's not coming together.
And they don't serve your going forward. And
exactly.
Your mother might have had to do it because her mother had decided this is what we do. This is how we do it, and it became a family thing. So when you look at it, you go, well, what is the intent in here? What is the benefit for me or for my family? And let's make it perfect. But yeah, so it's the same sort of story. You were just doing it because that's what you've done. And when we unpick those stories, we can we'll make a new tradition.
Exactly. Because I understand now it all comes together, but it was just a movie about the Passover. But I'm like, okay, there's something else that happened during that time afterwards. Where is that? Where is that piece of the tradition? Where is that piece of the story? Because yeah, everything comes together in that sense. And it was during that time when Jesus' crucifixion was during the Passover. But I'm like, where's the movie that we're going to watch about that?
Yeah, because you need something that's relatable to you moving forward, that has a real connection.
Yeah? Right,
so you find the connection in that, and how that looks for you will look like it is creating a new solid grounding for whatever belief or tradition you want to have for your family. And same with that roast. They still got together as a family, but they enjoyed each other. We didn't have to do the whole tradition thing because that wasn't important anymore. It was the being together and caring about each other and being, And so when we refocus and look at why we're doing the things, we can get better benefits. So for you, it'll be interesting to see what you do next year.
Yeah, definitely. Because when I mentioned it to my mom,
because now you'll be thinking, what serves me?
Yeah, exactly. And she was thinking the same thing. Like I mentioned that this year, and I think it kind of like broke something. It kind of like messed her up a little bit. I was like, wait a minute, like why aren't we just watching something else about this? And she's like, huh. And she had to think about it for a moment.
Yeah, because she has emotional attachment to the other tradition. And so it's about shifting that. So, my business, Liz's Insights, coaching.com, one of my titles, my taglines is You Matter, because everything starts and ends with us. And with traditions or how we feel about ourselves, our beliefs, they shape the world around us, but they also shape the world of the people in our world around us. And so if your story causes a ripple in someone else's life, what do you hope it does? Yeah.
I hope that it gives somebody hope and belief in themselves. I hope it gives them encouragement. Yes. And I love telling my story everywhere I go, different things, because, sometimes we could let certain things really get us down and make us feel less of ourselves. But if someone can show interest in that person and tell them the same story of how they got out of it or how yeah, this happened to me, but this is what worked for me in order for me to move forward. So I think that's very important to me, and to be the light, to show others, just show others love and, compassion and caring, because that's what people need. Like you stated earlier, all you just need that one person to encourage you know?
And so I am involved with your Hey Boss Laddies, and that's a place of support and collaboration and bringing community. And that I think is just a no-brainer for you because it's an extension of who you are, and it's a beautiful place to be. And if anybody's listening, there'll be some information. Reach out to Hey Boss Ladies. It's just a fabulous place to be, and that sort of encapsulates all those things that you're saying, which is really cool, Candice.
Thank you.
And so, just to round up here, if you could whisper one truth into the world, what would it be?
Don't listen. Don't how can I put this? Don't create a story of what someone is telling you that is not true. So stop listening and move forward.
Very good. Thank you, Candice. Look, it's been a delight to be with you here today. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, so I will put the info about the Hey Boss Ladies at the bottom of the podcast for people listening, because it could be a really great place for you.
Definitely. And thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Good. Thank you, Candice. I am going to stop the recording now.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening to the interview with Candice Dorsey from just outside San Francisco. Now, the quality of this podcast isn't quite as good as it is usually. There's been a couple of little fade outs, and also I'm not technically able to edit things that well yet, as you all noticed, but the value of the conversation I felt was really important, so I have kept it. Thank you for listening to the podcast this week, and I assure you I can get better and find some technical help on how to be able to edit properly, but today was good. And I'd love to hear how that landed for you and what sort of takeaway you got from it. Bye for now.